The passage from the second chapter of the book of James, which you just read, has long been one of my favorite biblical passages. Faith without works is dead. It's not what you say, it's what you do. As a young man who was planning to be a Christian minister, I took these words to heart, so much that I decided to get a social work degree in addition to my divinity degree, feeling uneasy even then about some Christian dogma. But I had complete faith in Christian love and action. I wanted to make it real. So before I went to graduate school, I wanted some experience in the real world. And I worked in an agency in the inner city of Chicago called Little Brothers of the Poor. It was an agency that assisted elderly shut-ins. And it was there that I met people of a wide variety of faiths. There was Brother Tony, a quiet Jesuit who often got arrested for participating in peace rallies. There was Tommy, who wanted to be a priest, but he was debating whether to exercise or exorcise his libido. There was Jim, a lapsed Catholic and a devout agnostic, who once told me that fundamentalists and atheists are basically the same, too dogmatic about something they know little about. And then there was Norm, a practicing Jew who left the business world in order to be a service to the poor. And then there was Sylvia, a non-practicing Jew, fresh out of college, trying to figure out what she wanted to do with her life. And there was Gail Zander, the first Unitarian Universalist I ever met. She described her faith as not really Christian, but we go to church anyway. Talking about our faith in more helpful ways is a topic of another day. And I also met Gail Reynolds, an atheist who was so disgusted with the church of her youth that she would be happy to never set foot in a church again. She would eventually become this minister's wife. Working with this hodgepodge of people challenged my faith. I knew what my motivation was. I was doing these good works because of my Christian faith. Yet I saw these people doing the same good work that I was doing, but for a variety of reasons. What was the faith that was being shown by these good works? It was not Christianity. It was something bigger, something more. I could not name it at the time, but it was my first experience with Unitarian Universalism. It was the assertion that people mattered more than any race or creed. What you believe is not as important as how you believe. Does your faith produce good works? Are you living a holy life? Are you helpful? Does what we say here on Sunday help us help others throughout the rest of the week? Unitarian Thomas Jefferson said, "It is in our lives and not from our words that our religion must be read," which is ironic because his words of freedom are much better than his actions as a slaveholder. But nevertheless, his words have inspired many to good deeds. I find it interesting that our denomination is the only one that celebrates famous Unitarian Universalists. I've never seen a t-shirt that says Profound Episcopalians. But we have our own sweatshirt. And of course it includes "and me," because we all hold that potential. But you can look at the names on the list, and we have our share of people who are known for their words, most notably Jefferson, Emerson, and Channing. But others on the list are known for their deeds. Thoreau for civil disobedience in his experiment at Walden. Clara Barton, a Universalist who founded the Red Cross. Susan B. Anthony, a Unitarian who dedicated her life to women's rights. Horace Mann, a Universalist who championed public schools for all. Dorothea Dix, an advocate for the mentally ill. Frank Lloyd Wright, an architect who believed that buildings should be in harmony with nature rather than obliterate it. Jane Addams, the mother of social work. Albert Schweitzer, a humanitarian who practiced medicine in Africa. And geneticist Luther Burbank, and of course our own H.O. Goodman. Whitney Young, the head of the Urban League during the turbulent 60s. Unitarian Universalists have been involved in much of the social progress of the past 2 centuries. But what are we doing now? Some say charity begins at home, and I think so does social action. Since the General Assembly of 1992, our denomination has been doing a difficult but needed self-examination in hopes of becoming an anti-racist institution. Since 1989, our denomination has instituted the Welcoming Congregation program to support the inclusion of gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgendered people. About 1/4 of our congregations have completed this program and can officially call themselves a welcoming congregation. This congregation is one of them, and is one of the factors that attracted me to you. But we've also spoken and acted on other issues. GA passed resolutions against the death penalty in 61, 66, 74, 79, and 89, and I think we were considering it again this year. If you want to become more deeply involved in this issue in a national level, there is the UUs against the death penalty. We've spoken out against poverty, and there's a group called UUs for a Just Economic Community. Some of us have been inspired by the interdependent web and our role in that. And nationally, there's an organization called the Seventh Principle Project. UUs have fought for religious freedom and against those who want to turn football games into sectarian prayer meetings and to make our public schools and courts forums for fundamentalism. For them, there's the Project of Freedom of Religion, run out of the Universalist Church in Pasadena. And of course, there's the mother of all UU service organizations, the UU Service Committee, our denomination's worldwide mission that fights poverty both in this country and abroad. Now, from this litany, you probably might have caught the clue that UUs tend to be on the liberal side of most issues. But we must caution ourselves not to be uncritical. We must remain inclusive of the conservative voices within our congregation, for it is that same faith with the history of inherent worth in every person, self-reliance, and civil disobedience has inspired some to emphasize personal responsibility and non-governmental interference. Being a UU conservative can be lonely, but I suggest that you check out the Conservative Forum for Unitarian Universalists. And for us dyed-in-the-wool liberals, left-of-the-green party people, I even strongly urge you to check it out too. more strongly, because we need to be in conversation with our brothers and sisters in faith. Because in these days of compassionate conservatives and save the surplus liberals, it's getting harder to distinguish our left hand from the right. But in general, liberals tend to change government policy, and conservatives stress charity and volunteerism. And a debate rages over what is the better approach. The right fears increased government dependency and control, and the left argues that charity only puts a Band-Aid on the problem and doesn't fix it. Instead of arguing which is correct, we can know that both are needed. Because people need to be saved from a burning building, and fire safety regulations need to be developed and enforced. In Forsyth County, there are many ways to be involved. If you're interested in education and better schools for all, you may join the NAACP suit of the Winston-Salem school system, which the National Presbyterian Church has already donated $10,000 to that fund. Or you may talk with Pat Fling, a member of this congregation who's involved in Big Brothers and Big Sisters, and make a difference in one child's life. Both are needed. You could volunteer with Marcia Meese and Reverend George Briggs and others in this congregation at Crisis Control Ministry and help shelter the homeless. And they'll be having trainings, and there's information about that on the foyer. Or you could talk with Jane Milner, a member here, and trying to change housing policy. Both are needed. You can address the landfill problem by taking personal responsibility to reduce our own waste. Or we may choose to sign the Grassy Creek petition. Both are needed. Both the personal and the political are needed. And as your minister, I want to help you do both. As a congregation, we hold many truths, some of them contradictory. We could play it safe and keep our convictions to ourselves. That would be a way to avoid conflict. We could just merely acknowledge each other's rights to their own beliefs and contemplate them in silence. But I would rather that each of us risk putting our faith in action and trust that the actions of good-hearted people will eventually lead to positive change. Because an inactive faith is like a stagnant pond that will eventually dry up. Let us flow like rivers, even though our tributaries may diverge from each other. Let us have faith that we will arrive at the same ocean that encompasses a better world. Okay, now it's the time for the pop quiz. In your order of service, I have a slip of paper that has your name and your number. And if you don't have a pen, you can engage in the social action of sharing. And what I want from you this morning is first for you to identify yourself. So hopefully the first two questions, your name and phone number, won't be too difficult. And then thirdly, I want to know what you're interested in. And secondly, I know many of you are really involved, and I want to know what you're involved in. I do this for two reasons, because I want to build on the good work that's already happening here. And also, I want us to know each other. Because one of you might be alone with an idea. But if there are 5 of you in this congregation, think of how much you can get done. Being active according to our conscience is important to us. Some people think Unitarian Universalism is an easy faith. They will glibly say, well, you can believe whatever you want to. But I say we're a more difficult faith because we do not allow people to recite the proper phrase and feel that they're done. Our religion is complex, and it can't be done in a creed on Sunday morning. It has to be something that we live all the time. Let us be active in the community. We might find like-minded people who see that what we do and say, where do you get the energy? And you can say, from my faith. And it's a real faith. And there are some that will never choose to join us, but they'll still recognize that we have a sincere faith. We're not sacrificing goats. We are a real religion with a long tradition of helping people. We are the religion of deeds, not creeds. The religion that forces us to live our personal faith. As you are finishing your quiz, I wish to relate a story I heard at GA 3 years ago. A woman had recently moved to a town in Colorado, I think it was, and she was at the laundromat and she was inquiring to another woman about local churches. And she asked about the Unitarian Universalists, and she was warned to stay away. The lady told her, those Unitarians, they just believe in love and doing good works. And she thought, well, it might not be a real religion, but it intrigued this woman enough that she went to the Unitarian Universalist Church, joined, and they used that slogan as on their T-shirts. After the service, I want you to put your piece of paper in the basket out in the foyer, but I invite you now, if you wish, to speak on how this Unitarian Universalist faith has caused you to move and act.
Rev Charlie is a fellow social worker, was agreed with
that it was something of a shock to my mother, who was in her late 80s, when I joined the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. But she was a loving, wonderful woman, and so quietly she asked me one day, "Kate, why did you join the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship? You've had such a strong background in first the Baptist faith and then the Methodist faith when you married." And it didn't take me but a minute. I was surprised that I could give one of those one-liners like the politicians. I said, "Mother, it was faith in action." That satisfied her. She said, "I'll go with you to your fellowship," and she did. Later, when she died at the age of 93, and we three girls were dividing some of her personal things, I opened her Bible. It had little slips in it in different places, and she had asked me to write out what I said, faith in action. And that was in her Bible. And it was a real comfort to me at that point in time. But I've diverged. And what you really wanted, the question you really wanted, was how has this congregation motivated you to be active? And I will say I joined it, I was already motivated somewhat, but I found a place where that was valued. And what I'm going to share with you, and I'll try to do it briefly. When my mother died, there was a little farm that was left to three girls. The other two, my sisters, wanted to form sort of a family partnership. It was sort of an Episcopalian idea from one of my nieces, that everything belonged to the family somehow. Well, I put up with it for about 3 years, and we were dividing a tax bill for $100 and another tax bill for $20 on a little lot. And I'm so independent that it was stultifying to me. And I said, I want what's mine, and I have a different idea of what I want to do with it. And my sisters, didn't take to that at all, but I was a member of the ACLU, and I was on the board, and I was talking to some of the lawyers, and they said, anybody has a right to his inheritance, and you can have a petition for partition. Well, first I said, I won't go that direction. I will offer to voluntarily divide this property any way that some competent person will do it, and we will put the 3 divisions behind our back, and you can, touch hands like we did as a child in a game. And I said, I'll take any division of it. I just want to be out. And one sister said, well, the majority rules 2 against 1, and I thought, well, minority has a right too. Whatever. I petitioned for a partition. I have had the best time with my little acreage, which probably amounted to 75 acres of woodland and cleared property. And we divided the woodland we sold the woodland and divided the proceeds before we divided the property, which was fair. I'm selling lots on the highway in a community that has been an Afro-American community, property that my father, who was a lawyer, acquired during the Depression because it was up for public sale. But it always bothered me that these people who had managed to buy their own property lost it during the Depression, and that those who had a little know-how, like a lawyer, could work it out. I understand now that you can't lose property like that. There's some sort of safeguard that the federal government, whatever. I've sold about 1 lot a year, and I've enjoyed doing it. I'm giving 1 lot back to my sisters because we're all in our 80s, and they're not in my will. It's very unlikely that they would inherit. It would go to their children. So I'm giving 1 lot to them. I'm asking my lawyer to parcel out 1 lot for Habitat for Humanity, and try to get that going in my little community in Eastern Carolina. So I will say that all of the good vibes that I get from this fellowship take seed, and that I'm very happy in the golden years of my life to be doing something independent of my sisters or their values, and I wanted to share it.
Let us.
I would like to see more contact, the helpline of the triad, because I think that most of the people here would like to help people who they don't know with needs that you don't know now. Contact helps you to understand how to relate to people in your own life and how to meet needs that you don't know of yet. And there are fewer people volunteering now because more people are working in the work that, of course, will have less time. But the training is remarkable because even if you've been in a helping profession, you probably haven't, unless you're a social worker or a psychiatrist or psychologist, you haven't been exposed to the very wide range of training and really of it, and the expertise is so useful. There are people living in the community who would have no other resource who have mental problems or mentally ill people, who have no other constant reinforcement, security in their life who call. And you might say these are chronic callers. Then there are people who are older people who would not be able to live independently, but because they get a reassurance call every day, there's someone who knows that they're okay, and there are ways of reaching people who would help them. And then there are children who have nowhere to call after school, who are alone in the house, who can call. And then there's a teen line where teens call and talk to teens who are trained to meet their needs. And I've been doing this for a number of years, and it's one of the most worthwhile ways that you can help people who you don't know, which I think all of us have concerns because we don't know all the needs that there are. So if you think you want to do that, call, contact, and volunteer for training, please. Okay.
We see the value of this fellowship. It's not only a value to us, but it's a value to the whole community. I ask you to give, not only so that this community survives, but that we can thrive and expand and continue to live our faith in Forsyth County.